once again for the, and this is not historically correct, but for the umpteenth time, Alan McDonald is joining me here, and we're going to cover Winchester's town election. Today is March 27th. Is it?
This
What
is
day-
the
what day is today?
26th, my friend.
26th, okay. Maybe we just skip ahead to tomorrow and we can just read the results.
It was a vote on March 26th. That's,
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
deal.
exactly. I knew that, and it's sitting here right in front of me,
you
so I should have known that.
There you go.
Anyway, it's a pleasure to have you back once
Pleasure to-
again.
Love
and,
being with you.
At some point, we may want to retire and get our WinCam pensions or something like that.
Maybe a number of folks who are rooting at me.
Would like to have us retire. Well,
You know, I want to welcome the both of us and the viewers. Thank you to the viewers who've been so good to tune in on this over the years, to the 95th anniversary of the elected town meeting. First elected town meeting, 1929. This is the 96th, actually, but that makes it the 95th anniversary. That's,
so does that mean in 4 years we can retire?
yeah, before the 100th. Before that, before 29, they used to have everybody in town would come to town meeting, just like...
Open town meetings?
Yeah, open town meeting. And then
Yeah.
we had 4,500 voters in town in the late 20s, and it didn't fit into town hall. And time to change the rules, so that was it.
Yeah.
So we've been electing since then, and of course we did the town charter in 1975 to make 8 precincts and to have 24 elected town meeting members in each of the 8
Each
precincts.
year.
So
Yep.
we're now a representative town meeting. We're close to 100 years for having it too.
Do you think we'll last?
I know,
All right.
but it's good to be here tonight.
Right. It's very good to be here. So let's talk about April. Now, boy, I am screwed up. March 26, 2024.
Yes.
And let's talk about what we've got on our ballot for townwide candidates. And of course, we have our town moderator, Heather Von Meering, running again unopposed. When was do you know when the last time a moderator competed?
We haven't had a contest since before Harry Chadwick, actually, going back. The town moderator has been elected in Winchester by the town since 1915. And used to, before that, each session of town meeting would elect the town moderator for that meeting.
Yeah.
So you would have, you look back in the old town reports, Ellen Knight could tell you this, there might be 6 or 7 moderators during one town meeting that took place over 6 or 7 nights. But in 1915, they said, we're going to have one at a time for the whole town meeting, and they started to elect. And I haven't gone back far enough to find a contest, actually. I haven't, but since the time of Harry Chadwick, Ray Kenny, then John Sullivan, and Peter Haley, and now
we're going back into that's in the 60s, I would believe, back into the 60s.
For Harrison, yeah, before in the 50s.
50s, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1950s.
So,
So that's it. So Heather, of course, this is her 4th year
yep.
to be town moderator, and she is a past member of the planning board for 4 years. Heather was elected to the planning board twice, and during her 2nd term, had the chance to run for town moderator and did. And we are making up now for having 2 candidates for planning board tonight who will be very good additions to the planning board to really, in a sense, fill those seats that Heather Hannon and Heather Von Meering had back when they were both elected in 2020, actually. If I can think back to that, and then I think that was the year. But 4th term in the moderator spot, succeeding Peter Haley. And so Heather is an elected, that we expect will be an elected official again.
We would we would think so. But the more interesting things are the select board and the school committee, where each of those races we have 4 candidates for 2 slots.
We do. It's a very interesting election this year, I think, and we actually have 11 townwide seats up for re-election or straight election, and only 5 incumbents on the ballot for townwide office. So we know we're going to get at least 1 new select board member, 1 new school committee member, We'll have a new library board of trustee. We'll have a new board of health member, and maybe even housing authority. We'll talk about that. But definitely in the select board race, 4 candidates, 1 incumbent, of course. Mike Betancourt, who's running for his 4th term. Mike's a former finance committee member. He's an attorney and small business owner. He has, in his campaign, was saying, haven't missed a select board meeting in 9 years. That's pretty impressive, I would say. Yeah.
I'd have to look at his promotional material here.
There you go. He's been very active in finance matters and all of the town activities. And there are 3 challenges to Michael, and that's Bill McGonigal, who's next on the ballot,
Yep.
who's in town meeting, and he's on the zoning board of appeals. He's an attorney, also an attorney, and his work is in representing municipalities, very familiar with municipal law. He has been active in the Lincoln Parents Group. He's very supportive of education. Right through all the candidates, collaboration, communication, everybody was interested in that and in education as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember a selectman's race, select board race, if you will, where so much was talked about education. It really is a priority
Hot
in the
topic.
town. And of course, we'll talk about the school committee.
Yeah.
But Dorothy Simboli is also on the zoning board of appeals. She's also town meeting, and she's also an attorney. And she's very active in representing real estate and land use issues.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
much interested in balanced growth in the housing stock of the town. Also very interested in the literacy programs and education, again, part of the select board campaign in this particular year.
Right.
And the 4th is Vince Dixon, and this is Vincent Dixon's 3rd time on the ballot. He ran in 22 and 23, and back in 24. Vince is an historian by his own
Very much.
words, and he's been active in the finance committee and on the investment committee for the subcommittee on education. Very interested
Oh.
is he in education as well. So that's really been a theme, and Vince's other theme has really been about government structure. He's an historian looking at, as he says, the rule of law, the rule of structure in governance, and he wants to bring more of that into the community that he feels could be a factor for going to Winchester's future. So those are our candidates for select board. You've got 1 longtime incumbent, 9 years in.
Yep.
Who's chairing the board now, and then 2 challenges from the zoning board of appeals with similar backgrounds, and 1 challenger, Vince Dixon, who's been very active in the city of Cambridge in a lot of
Yes,
issues before
yes.
he came to Winchester, and bringing a different look at what it is to be on the select board.
And a lot of excitement, you know, on my experience going to the polls today, there were mobs of people out supporting the different candidates.
This
So,
has
a lot of
been,
enthusiasm.
this election cycle is one of the best I've witnessed, I think, for the town in a few years' time. I think I felt it in 2022 as you saw more candidates coming forward. It didn't happen as much in 23, but back again to this year, it's not just the candidates themselves, it's the support groups. They really, I think, hats off to the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce, frankly, for introducing the candidates. The League and the Chamber both did a beautiful job of bringing people together to hear the candidates, and then to have the even town meeting members provide a background piece to go on the website was very impressive.
Yeah.
And for the chamber, and I really I thought that that was very helpful, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about that as we talk about town meeting candidates.
Sure.
But I feel that the campaign activities and very high level. I mean, it was issue oriented in each of the campaigns. And even in the Housing Authority, we'll talk about, but you know, Thomas Mourier, who's running against Jim Harris, who's now in the seat, said, I think Mr. Harris is doing a good job, I just want to help out. He didn't say, you know, the other guy is doing a terrible job. And that was right throughout the campaigns.
It is.
Really.
It is good to see some civility in there because in government or from the local level on up, there seems to be a lack of it.
Yeah,
there,
oh yeah,
so-
no, we're doing much better than following the example from other jurisdictions, mostly probably at the national level,
Yes.
unfortunately.
But one of my close friends is a moderator in another town,
Yeah.
and he's been there for, this is going on 20 years, but he says the civility level is going down. You know, that everybody feels like they have to argue and will not listen to the other point of view, and that's disappointing.
I feel, when I look back at the notes from prior years, even in town reports, you go back, in 1979, I was looking at it this past week, just kind of fun because that was when I was more involved. The issues of the campaign were downtown, what are we going to do downtown, and what about housing? We need help on housing. And you look at what the issues are 25 years later. What are we doing downtown? Let's get it going.
Housing. And education, right?
But we have added some issues. Education has always been important.
Yeah.
But it's in the discussion we've had, something that we all recognize, and the discussions, there have been some, I won't say heated, but maybe so, maybe even heated, but not with animosity, just differences of opinion or what to do with, you can pick an issue, Waterfield lot, in this case, literacy, education, other things. But the discussions have been much more about issue fairness and recognizing that someone else might have a different point of view, but I like where I am, and I'm open-minded to hear why I shouldn't feel the way I do, but tell me more.
Yes,
So anyway,
please, please. Well, going down the ballot, we don't have a race in assessor. Paul Manganaro is up for re-election.
Paul's up for the fourth term. Actually,
Yep.
both Paul Manganaro and Michael Betancourt, when I look at it, came on at the same time. They're both running for their fourth term, and Paul is, of course, the longtime leader of Winchester Sports Hall of Fame and active in many areas for the sports programs and fundraising in the town. And he's now the senior member of the Board of Assessors with Rich Michienzi and George Nowell Jr. George came on last year to fill Patrick Gill's spot. Patrick Gill moved and left the vacancy.
Yep.
And George has come up to be on the assessors. So Rich and George are relatively new to the board, but Paul is now going into his fourth term, so we've got some stability there.
Yep, exactly. Board of Health?
Yeah, Board of Health is Dr. Shannon Scott Vernalia, and we'll talk about Brian Vernalia, who's going on to the planning board, and Brian has been an incredible active person in the town of Winchester, kind of the Harry Sheffalo, Eddie O'Connell background of being involved in so many things. But we'll talk about Brian, but Dr. Shannon.
Hopefully there are people out there that know what you're talking about when you talk about the Harry Sheffalo.
And Eddie O'Connell. They were on
Yeah.
numerous committees over 40 or 50 years' time. So Shannon is Dr. Shannon Scott Vernalia. She's a pediatrician. She works with the vaccination clinics and tracking infectious diseases, ensuring food safety. She's very much supportive of what we have as the Winchester Coalition for a safer community. It works closely with the town's health department, the leader, Jennifer Murphy. And as Dr. Shannon Vernalia says, she's here to formulate and enforce rules and regulations affecting the environment and public health. That's what the Department of Public Health does. So if somebody was wondering, why would somebody run for the Board of Health and what do they do? That's what they do. And she's totally capable to step up and do that, as we know. So we're going to
And as we say, as we pointed out, she's unopposed, so she is in.
Well, that's
She's in
exactly
for
right.
that,
She is unopposed,
Yep.
and
And
we'll,
obviously with her and husband Brian, it's a family affair. You
Well, that's
wonder,
right.
you wonder, I don't know if they have kids, but do you think they'll be home at all
well, this is right. And of
between
course,
the two jobs?
yeah, Maureen Quill, Henry Quill, for whom we named the Rotary downtown. His daughter Maureen Quill Pimentel had one term on the Board of Health. She was elected in '21, and she has gone off the board. She is a nurse practitioner and very active in the health world as well. And she came on and did a term on the Board of Health. Thank you very much to Maureen. And now Dr. Shannon Scott Finale is going to succeed her.
Okay. And that slides us into planning board, where we have two to be elected. So
Well, I
that-
mentioned the planning board, Brian Vanalia, both are going to be elected because we have
Right.
two running for two openings. And Brian is a lifelong resident, engineering background. He was town meeting member since 2011. He was on the finance committee for 5 years, went off. He's back on. He's on the was on the capital planning committee, energy management committee, school committee. Topped the ticket for school committee back in 2018. Been the president of McCall Parents, school volunteer for Lincoln and McCall. And here's the winner, here's the kicker. He was the Girl Scouts townwide cookie coordinator for 2012 to 2018. How's that? That's a qualification.
There you go.
Yeah, so Brian's very active. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been so involved in stuff. And John Cortizas is new to townwide elective office. He has 2 adult children. They've grown. He's ready to come into town service and get active. So he's got that opportunity. It's sort of a time in his life when he wants to serve the community, and he's going to have an opportunity to build a resume like Brian when he comes on.
Well, and we got to talk about the challenges facing the planning board. We have town meeting coming up, and the MBTA mandates that the town meeting has to vote on, and that's may involve some zoning changes downtown. Although I think I believe we're in pretty good position for that.
Well, I think what'll happen here is, and this is part of the good news of this campaign season, I think, with people really getting serious about treating these issues and getting in front of them. The planning board the last 3 years has been well run by I Ching, Katie Scott, and Sally Dale, who are both going off now. But in the change by Heather Von Meering becoming moderator and Heather Hannon going out of town, we had people filling those spots who did a good job, but weren't in the long term. Kurt Spring, Cheryl Wolf, I think was, and when I think back, we did 1 year, and maybe a second year, and that was it. And now we're going to have really a long, a solid planning board of 5 members who are looking at the longer term together. Because it's very hard to do it as just 2 or 3 people. Terrific folks have come forward because we needed them to come forward. But when it's only for a year or 2, so much is happening over a longer period. Planning board, so many of the issues are multi-year issues.
Right, and we lost the town's planner, and so I believe it was about a 6-month, if I'm correct, about a 6-month gap between losing one and getting another one.
That was the thing, is so you had, Maureen Meister had 7 terms on the planning board, like 2000 to 2021. Let's see, I think, I'm trying to think, Betsy Krager was on for 5, she was on for 5 terms, so they were all together, and long-term, and those issues that take that kind of attention. And so we had a lot of changes over the last couple of years. I think this is going to solidify things.
Yeah, and we had some positive changes in the downtown area, which obviously is going to be a focus on with this MBTA mandates, that we don't end up like Milton. But my understanding of the zoning, a lot of the zoning is already in place downtown. It was only 10 years ago maybe that you couldn't have mixed-use buildings in the center. You could not get residential and commercial in the same building unless they were already grandfathered there. So
I think
that's changed, and that's spurred some pretty good, in my opinion, pretty good development there, or potential development. As we'll see, if the Fells project gets going, the Waterfield lot, and potential redevelopment of the Converse Place building. So.
Well, I think that, so great thanks to I Ching's Katie Scott and Sally Dale for holding the fort, frankly, for the last 3 years. But I do think that we're going to go forward with a good group. And You know, and I think of some of the Hall of Famers we've talked about in the past who've served in the different committees, and I think of the Charles Sacramus years on the planning board, and the people who worked with Charles on that really did a tremendous job for us during the redo, if you will, of the downtown and the school reuse and those kinds of things. And I think we can get back to that. I think we're going to have some good people here. I know we do, and
Yeah.
it's going to work out.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. School committee,
School committee, order race.
two for
yeah.
4 slots.
So this is another situation like the select board where you've got one incumbent running, for this case, for a second term, and 3 for the open seat if the incumbent happens to get reelected. But of course, we could have 2 new come in, as happened before. Happened when Bob Frank was chair of the school committee, and there were challenges, and he didn't get reelected. Even the 2 new people came in. I'll talk about, I don't need to talk about that. But Tom Hopcroft is the current chair of the school committee. Very capable and running for a second term. He's had finance committee experience and the state of Massachusetts experience. Tom was the CEO of a group called the Massachusetts Technology Leadership Council. And he was appointed by Deval Patrick, and then he was reappointed by Charlie Baker. So that covers some ground.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And then he was also a member of the Massachusetts Board of Higher Education. So he's had exposure in the state picture, and his experience, by his estimate, is that he's good at bringing people together on different issues through those experiences. And he's very big on early childhood literacy and equity among the school districts for offering similar quality programs, of course, something we all aspire to see. And he is an attorney and a business leader, and he's going for this second term on the school committee. And the 3 challenges, in a sense, to Tom Hopcroft: Tim Matthews, who is relatively new to the town, here since 2018 or so, is a psychologist, has had a career in education, especially in how children learn. He has a master's in education, a doctorate in education, Cornell, Brown, Harvard, all well represented in his background. And he was working on his postdoc in the Boston Public Schools Central Office, and had a good idea of how they're doing their thing. Not that we would repeat all that in Winchester, but has had an experience there and wants to be very active. He's in Precinct 1. He's been active with 2 youngsters, 3 and 7, I guess, and he's anxious to get involved. Very interesting in early childhood literacy. Naturally, it would be, I would think, with the kids, but also that's his interest anyway.
Yeah.
And mental health, early education focused around literacy. So we see that, and literacy is the big issue. And so Carrie Sue Barney is also running. She's a resident since '09, so a longer period of time, and super active over all those years since coming to Winchester. She's been president of the Parents Association at Lincoln in the past. She's president of the McCall Parents Association. Her career is in process improvement and systems implementation, so that she sees how to run things, and she sees organizational structure, and she wants to bring that more to the school into things. There is discussion, of course, as we know, even from local press, on standards-based grading. And we have a candidate in Carrie Sue Barney who sees a merit in that, and we have a candidate coming up we'll talk about in Me Lin Trong, who would like to phase out the current literacy program that has been discredited by some and have something different. So we have Carrie Sue Barney on those things I just talked about, and interested in the better school breakfast lunch program and the literacy curriculum standards. And then the 4th candidate is Me Lin Trong, who's on the Finance Committee in the last 5 years, and chair in 2022 of the Finance Committee, very active at Ambrose, I think it was, and a mother of 2 Winchester High School graduates, but then others are still in school. And she would like to see more work on social emotional well-being for academic excellence, and more collaboration and communication, again, which was a theme across many candidates. But she brings that kind of talent to the program. So you've got 4 candidates here who are very well backgrounded on education matters. All of them bring strength to the picture, so it's going to be very
It's going to be
interesting
interesting
election.
to see how it works out.
Yeah.
All right, Library Board of Trustees, just a new member.
Yeah,
going
James
on.
Remus,
Yeah.
new member, and he's succeeding Jane Murray. Jane has had 5 terms on the Library Board of Trustees. So she stepped down, didn't go back on the ballot. And so this is a new James Remus, new to townwide elective office, and coming on the Library Board of Trustees, which we're very pleased that he would step forward and want to do that activity.
And again, he is one candidate for one seat, so he is
He is.
elected.
So this is it. So we will have we'll have at least one new member of the school committee, at least one new member of the select board, 2 new planning board members, a new board of health person, a new library board of trustees, and this housing authority. Let me just talk about housing. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Housing authority, of course, is in charge of our public housing. We have 112 units of senior housing. We have 7 units of family housing in Winchester. And the housing authority has 5 members on it who serve 5-year terms. 4 are elected and 1 is appointed by the governor. And so, and so last year, Steve Anderson was finishing his 2nd year, so it would have been a decade, and he allowed the seat to open up, and we actually had it open for the election, and after the election was over, James Harris was appointed to the position. Now, he's a young man, 31 years old. He's a UMass Amherst graduate. He's a member of a multi-generational family in Winchester. And he's a student in grad school at the University of Rhode Island in public administration. And he sees a career in public administration for himself or public service. And he's been very active in his 1 year. He's been a volunteer over at the Arlington Fidelity House, which is a kind of a social athletic, bring people in, and he's had some experience there on how to handle those kinds of activities. He's been very
Fidelity
active.
House, similar to the Jenks Center?
Yeah,
here?
well, and it's more open for, it's for younger too, but also for any age, I believe, is the deal.
Yeah.
But he's interested in that kind of a career, and very, very positive words to say about the Housing Authority. Can't say enough good things about the people we have running the program. But of course, the challenger, who, as I already said, he's doing a good job, but I'd like to help out, is a young man who graduated from Winchester High School last June, 23. So that's Thomas Mourier. So Thomas Mourier, who's the Winchester High class of 23, is at Northeastern University. He's active with the student group there, working on affordable housing construction in Boston through Northeastern University student group. And when he was at Winchester High, he founded a group called the Winchester High Finance Club. Very active, he's an organizer. He sees an opportunity for more transportation for seniors in Winchester, more housing opportunities for seniors in Winchester. And so he's put himself on the ballot, and he wants to be out there. And so you've got 2 people who are very interested in housing authority issues. And it hasn't always been the case that we've been lucky enough to have people volunteer for the 5-year term if they can get elected. So we haven't had many contests for the Housing Authority, but we have one this year. So it's going to be very interesting. So we'll either have Mr. Harris back, who's had 1 year under his belt, or we'll have Thomas Mourier, but relatively new blood on the Housing Authority.
Should be interesting.
Yep.
All right, town meeting members.
Oh yeah, town meeting members. We have, I'll just say that it matches up with the talent that's running at this town-wide, because this particular year, some years more than others, when you see the repeat, we've got really high power in the town meeting situation. And the good news is the very few vacancies, or a couple of write-in opportunities, but But really, those are for one-year terms, and one where we have 7 candidates for 8 seats for the 3-year term. But,
Which precinct is that? I just know we've got 10 for 8 on precinct 1, right?
Yeah, we've got, that's what Connor Graham is the write-in candidate. It's precinct 5. He actually submitted a background to the chamber website saying he noticed there was room for a write-in and he'd like to be the write-in. He's only a resident for 1 year, but he put his name in. He represents the tech industry. He's come in from the West Coast. He was out of Seattle, San Francisco, and St. Louis then later on. But he's landed in Winchester, loves the town, very excited about it, and he noticed that there's room for a write-in in precinct 5. Would you please write my name in? So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Connor Graham. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, clever.
But if we started at the top of precinct 1, we'd start with why not start with a Citizen of the Year person? What the heck, you know? Bob Deering, chair, of course, of the school facilities rebuilding and building committee,
Yep.
all that, and Citizen of the Year. And Bob is a long-time member of the precinct 1 town meeting and coming back. And when you go down the precinct 1 candidates, incumbent, we have 10 candidates for 8 seats. 6 of the candidates are incumbents, and we have 1 write-in for a year. But Bob Deering, as I say, at the top. Chris Nixon, school committee chair, 5th term on the school committee, capital planning committee background, tons of committee work for the school.
And I think he's the chair of the EFPBC right now,
And
right?
he's now, succeeded
Yeah.
Bob Deering. So phenomenal. Seamus Brady, who's past finance committee and school committee, just going off the school committee, making that opening. And he's on the ABC board, very active in town, just completed a nice term on the school committee. Matthew Rotundi, I think we all are familiar with that name,
Yep.
who's a new candidate for town meeting. But Mark Feblowitz, past school committee in the early 2000s. Doug Marmon, past select board
Yeah.
in the teens of the 2000s. Susan Vidicchio, past school committee,
Committee.
past select board. Pretty good lineup here.
Yeah.
Kate Duncan, Morocco School volunteer and Creative Corner volunteer. Tony Lynn Frayne, volunteer for school programs. And Mara Sullivan, who's the co-chair for Winchester Coalition for a Safe Community, and also a volunteer with Morocco and McCall. So those are the candidates for town meeting. So you got to say we're attracting some very solid people to go to town meeting to handle some of these
Sure.
issues.
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't stop with precinct 2. We've got Daniel Nakamoto, who's had 2 terms on the personnel board. We have George Nowell Jr., who was part of the father-son team at town meeting, which is got to be a 4 decades long father-son team. It's terrific. But George just went on, as I said earlier, to the Board of Assessors, appointed to Phil Patrick Gill's seat, who moved out of town. Menina Whiteham, who's the co-vice president, of Morocco Parents Association. George Nowell Sr., class of 1962 from Winchester High School. Happen to know that.
How would you know that?
George, thank you for coming back on the town meeting. Ryan Sanson Beck, who's a volunteer at Creative Corner, the Family Action Network, and a resident here for only 3 years, but he's really into it, so good for him. Stefan Alexandru Karp, who's on the Finance Committee since 2020. Laura Colella, past Morocco PTO co-chair, town meeting since 2009. Susan Cheney County up for re-election. Adam Coffin, same thing, re-election. And Deanna Lofa, who's the past Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commissioner and volunteer for many events in town. So that's precinct 2, also a pretty substantial lineup.
Yeah, and again, we got 3, 6, 9 for 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4,
I've got
5,
10
6,
candidates
7,
for
8,
8,
9,
don't I?
10.
Yeah, 10
Yep.
candidates
10.
for 8, yep.
So much for my quick counting there.
And then
Precinct 3.
Precinct 3, right near the downtown area, 10 candidates there for 8 seats as well, 7 incumbents. Vince Dixon, the candidate for Select Board, we talked about Vince. Lauren Herman, Finance Committee, been here since 2017 in Winchester. And Lauren, if you're watching, very impressed with your video of your candidacy. Everybody put a background on the chamber internet website, And Lauren did a video about her candidacy. And Lauren, I enjoyed it. It was really, really terrific. And good luck to you in your election. Robin Vokes, also on the ABC, Community Music School, Lincoln and McCall Parents Association, and up for re-election. So there you go. Megan Sheehan is on the board of the Co-op Nursery School. She's a coach of youth basketball with the Recreation Department. And she's a new candidate to come on, and that's the background she's bringing. They were in Precinct 3 still. Kathy Bodie,
Yeah.
my goodness,
Yeah.
5 terms, 5 terms on the school committee, past president of ABC, 30 plus years in town meeting, and of course superintendent of the schools in Arlington, and a phenomenal public servant for this town. So she's an incumbent. Also an incumbent, Thomas Howley. My goodness, past planning board before he was a 3-term member of the select board, chair of the new Winchester High School when that was going on, president of the Right Lock Land Trust, so many things, Tom Howley.
Citizen of
I
the
could
Year.
keep going. Another citizen of the year,
Yeah.
exactly. We could keep going with
Yeah,
Tom.
right.
He's an incumbent, and good luck, Tom, in getting reelected. There you go. Susan McPhee.
Yeah.
She's on the Right Lock Farm Board. She's been super active there too. And then Karen, an incumbent, and Karen Merrick Connolly, incumbent, past executive director of the Winchester Foundation for Education Excellence.
Yes.
So, and also a Paul Harris Award winner for the Winchester Rotary Club.
Aye.
That's pretty big, frankly.
Yep.
So that's pretty good. Jason Lewis, Precinct 3, past state representative, current state senator. He was active, though, before all this on the Finance Committee and the Master Planning Committee. So he's done his stint for us locally as well, still doing it. And Amy Poftak, who's a long-term Winchester family, she is currently the director of communications for the Harvard Business Review. She did it for Georgetown and Stanford. Before that, when she was away from town, she's moved back, now active over at Harvard. And so she's been back for half a dozen years, but she's very much active in the town. And so Precinct 3's got a pretty good lineup too. Now for 1 year, in Precinct 3, there's one write-in.
write-in.
There are 2 candidates for the one write-in. One is Shannon Elizabeth Footer.
Oh, there was a campaign for it?
Well,
Sort of?
she's out there,
Yep.
but she has a hard fight because she's running against Sarah Girardi, and Sarah is running to be a write-in for a year for Precinct 3, happens to be past school committee chair, the past capital planning committee, past co-chair of the Lincoln and McCall Parents Association, and of course
Oh,
the
yes,
Winchester Soccer Club Board. So Shannon has taken on a good contestant, and we wish them well. And I'll say to Shannon, if you don't happen to get written in ahead of Sarah, there'll be opportunities for you in the caucuses at Precinct 3 and that kind of thing, so please stay involved. So that's what's happening there. And if we have time, we could go to Precinct 4.
Let's go to Precinct 4 and we'll take a break after that.
Okay, 10
Yeah.
candidates, so then we'll take the second half later. But you have 10 candidates in Precinct 4 for the 8 seats, and again, 7 incumbents. But you know the interesting thing about the incumbents, we have 74 candidates for the 66 or so seats. I guess these 64 plus the write-ins on the 1-year terms. We have at least 20 non-incumbents that will be coming in, because I think we have 45 incumbents running. So,
Yeah.
so that guarantees what happens every year, 10 to 11, sometimes 12% turnover at town meeting. Always the long-term people, but every year bringing in new people to start their long-term. So Precinct 4, Mary Kay McIntyre, she's an ABC host family and a part of the ABC administrative team. Bettina Suzanne Parks is up for re-election with also Mike Rossio and Catherine Vallone and Bhavana Appadayaya. All those people are up for re-election. And the other folks, we have a new candidate with Heidi Rachel Rootstein DeLeo, who's long-term resident of the town, 35 years or so, and a downtown small business owner. Stephen Boksansky, running for re-election, longtime volunteer in youth baseball and softball, and some of the other activities around town. But Then you've got two
Candy Van Aken.
two veterans.
yeah, yeah.
Can't say enough about
Sally
Candace Van
Quinn.
Aken, the Winchester Historical Commission, longtime town meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but so active, and Peter Van Aken, who was her hubby, and we've lost
Yeah.
Peter, but
Yep.
he's one of my Hall of Fame people, in my opinion, from capital planning to Board of Selectmen in his day. He was something special.
Sure.
And Sally Quinn,
Quinn.
something special,
Right.
Citizen of the Year.
Another
Now,
Citizen of the Year,
I
yep.
got a bunch of Citizens of the Year in
Yeah.
town meeting. Sally Quinn is Right Lock Farm Conservancy and Land Trust.
Yes.
So, good for her, and Citizen of the Year. And then Kimberly Paolino is there as a challenger for one of the open seats.
Right.
So those are, boy, I'll tell you, the first 4 precincts, and it still stays pretty well as we go for the second 4, but that's
Well,
a pretty good lineup.
And you and I have been doing this enough years where we've looked at this and seen 6 and 7 candidates for
yeah. Oh,
8
yeah.
seats. So
the-
obviously there's a lot of commitment and involvement.
I really feel, the excitement of it, that there are people really wanting to be more involved. We still are so dependent on the volunteer activity. This community, as we say all the time, runs by volunteers, and you can really get into making a difference. There's no
Yeah.
question about it, and so many people have. And to see, hopefully, these folks setting the example for more to come behind.
Right.
We've all followed examples ourselves of the people who came before us.
Sure.
So that's what makes this town what it is. So
It is.
that's a good thing.
So let's, good point to take a break here, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
And at some point, I probably should.
show here. And we're going to continue going on through the ballot. We're still waiting for some results to come in from Town Hall, from the town clerk's office. So while we're waiting for that, let's go back and talk about our town meeting candidates.
Great.
Beginning in Precinct 5.
Yeah, we did the front four and now the second four, and then we'll hopefully get some election results as we're finishing this up. But Precinct 5, you've got 8 seats, 6 incumbents. This is the one with the 7 candidates where Connor Graham is asking to be written in, so we'll see what happens. But Ruth Tremarky, who's the chair of the Board of Health, of course, so she leads the precinct ballot, and re-election for Jason Roeder. Carol Savage, another one I couldn't say enough about, but number one, she's involved in so many things, but the backbone of the Financial Advisory Committee to the Selectmen in 2000 to 2002, the FACTS Committee.
Oh, yes.
Carol was fabulous.
Yep.
So she's an incumbent running for re-election. Thank you, Carol, for all that work. Eric Keogh for re-election. Dave Miller's a new candidate, but he's chair of the Winchester Conservation Commission and on the board of the Winchester Housing Partnership, so he's pretty involved. Bob Johnson has got to be 40 plus years at town meeting and active in so many things. An incumbent, of course, and prominently active in Precinct 5. And Jacqueline Welch. And Jackie Welch is past Personnel Board Chair, Planning Board Chair, Select Board for a term, and just very, very active, did a fabulous job in the Personnel Board activity at a time we really needed that help at town meeting. You know, she's an attorney and very, very active with the town.
Sure.
And then Connor Graham was there, wants to be a write-in, and Stephanie Ann Niaji, who's on for a one-year term. She's unopposed for a one-year term. So pretty good lineup there. And Precinct 6, 10 candidates for 8 seats, only 4 incumbents this time. Andrew Clavet, who is an attorney in Winchester and a coach in Winchester Youth Hockey, is a new candidate, as is Nicole Lentine and Jeffrey Calabrese and Steve Bonnell. But I think people will recognize Steve Bonnell's name as a prominent business person in the town of Winchester and from a prominent family in the town of Winchester.
Right. You know, also, you know, although he's not listed as a candidate for re-election, he moved.
Okay.
So he was in another precinct. He's a new candidate in Precinct 6.
New candidate.
Yep.
Good for him too.
Yep.
And then Joan Miller, who is up for re-election, and she's been active herself, and her husband John Miller as well, who was part of the FACTS committee I just talked about, and she's up for re-election. Brenda Outwater Mandeel, who is a new candidate, but not new to the town activity. Brenda is past chair of Children's Own Parents Association, the VO Parents, the Winchester High School Parents, and a group called the Parents for Inter-School Council. So she is now going to take a deep breath and run for town meeting too. So Brenda, thank you. Good luck. And Monica Ross, who's past president of VO Parents Association, also a volunteer with that Parents for the Inter-School Council. She is running as an incumbent, as is Noha Magdi Solomon for re-election, Christopher Galetta for re-election, and new candidate Derek Ross, spouse of Monica Ross, who is running to join Monica at town meeting as a new candidate. So good luck, and there's our Precinct 6. Precinct 7.
Make it a family affair.
Well, exactly.
Right.
There used to be more, actually. There used to be a bunch of couples. I was just talking about John and Phyllis Williams in my day.
Yes.
John passed away only a year back, but John and Phyllis together did so much as a couple.
Yep.
And Phyllis is still with
the
us and
McGee,
doing fine.
Justin and Marianne McGee.
Justin and Marianne, fabulous team.
Yep.
Precinct 7,
All right.
8 candidates for 8 seats. Only 3 incumbents here. New candidate Victoria Hopcroft. Probably Tom made a TikTok her into running, or she's talked to Tom and having her run. But she's had a very accomplished background, Board of Visitors at McLean Hospital. Locally, too, she's Friends of Winter Pond, but she's very active with the McLean Hospital, very prominently involved in those health issues. Up for re-election, Chris Jones, and the new candidate, Kelly Nierenberg. Re-election for Elizabeth Sarah Schreiber. Same for Deborah Bryant Topita, who's past president of the Winchester Foundation for Education Excellence. On the chamber board, she's a volunteer with McCall and the parents with the Interschool Council. Then we have new candidates, Joshua Burrs, who's active with the Winchester Climate Action Advisory Committee, Margaret Moran Browder, who's the treasurer of the Lynch Parents Association, and Isabel McGee, new candidate. But again, you see people coming on who are active in other areas of the town and going to bring some of that experience to town meeting.
Right.
And that's a good thing. Precinct 8, you have 7 candidates for 8 seats, 6 incumbents, and then 2 candidates vying for a 1-year term. So Aaron Fogel is a new candidate. He's been active in the Children's Co-op Theater, active with the Lynch Parents Association, happens to be a Babson MBA who is into web design and development and could bring some technical skill to town meeting with all that. The rest are incumbents for Precinct 8. Our own Norman Doucette, a WinCam member for sure.
Yep.
And Historical Society, and the retired operator for the transfer station, Winchester Transfer Station, and Norman was in charge of all the recycling activity and really did so much for the town over time, and he's still doing it at town meeting. Right. So thanks to Norman. And Heather Von Meering is Precinct 8, as we know, town moderator, past planning board chair, and very active in helping us out in this town. And then you see 4 names, all for re-election: Martin Francis Mahoney, John Weil, Frida Nace, and Hank Hun Yun Lin, all doing their job for Precinct 8. In a contest for the 1 year between Christine Lowenstein, who's a volunteer with school sports, especially the past 4 years of WHS football. Actually, Christine Lowenstein, I should have put it that way. And if you've been watching Winchester football, you're very familiar with that name for a very talented team. We had a good team this year, and young Mr. Lowenstein did a very nice job. And the other candidate, Laura Conti, is a volunteer with Morocco Parents Association in the Co-op Nursery School, and also very involved in the town and doing a good job by coming forward to run for town meeting.
A lot of depth of talent and commitment. As you usually do, you bring some of the people who are retiring or have retired from town government.
You look at every 3 years, I look at the people who ran in 2021, and you say, well, their 3-year term is up, and I look in the 24 ballot, and they're not on the 24 ballot. So how did that happen? But David Heinold, who had 5 terms on the Board of Health, from 2001 to 2016 from Precinct 1. Not back on the ballot. That was a surprise, but he's retired from town meeting. Tony Conti, who I think retired last year, but Tony Conti was a voice at town meeting that was always the other side. If you want to hear the other side, Tony, with all respect, would come forward, and it could be 122 to 3, but it was okay, But, I admired him for his strength of purpose coming forward, but he certainly had over 25 years at town meeting and didn't go back on the ballot. Maureen Meister, I mentioned her, 7 terms on the planning board. She was on the town meeting for probably a 30-year period. And Mary Ann McCall Taylor did a fabulous job. She must have had 40 plus years at town meeting, but Mary Ann McCall Taylor had 3 terms on the planning board. They happened to be back in the 1980s and 90s when we were a little younger ourselves, and I remember it well. But Mary Ann did a wonderful job. Her husband, Doug Taylor, very accomplished physician, and again, a great couple, and thank you, Mary Ann, for your service. Precinct 5, a couple of young people, Tim Nolan and Phil Frateroli, were not back on this ballot, but they're still involved in the town, and
Very
more to
much.
come from those folks.
Yeah.
And Margie McIndoe, I think for those who've known Margie a long time, volunteer from Precinct 6, has moved out of Precinct 6, and she's not back on the ballot, but really has been a great volunteer for a long time. Of course, the townwide office, Rich Mucci is stepping down.
Yep.
He's been chairing the select board, very active in the town, very active with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to see a lot of Rich Mucci still, without question. But thank you, Rich, for your service on the select board. I mentioned Maureen Quill Pimentel going off the Board of Health, H.N. Katie Scott and Sally Dale going off the Planning Board, Seamus Brady going off the School Committee, and Jane Murray off the Library Board of Trustees. We mentioned all of those folks, but
Yeah.
thank you for your service,
Yeah.
and for those coming along to fill those spots, great promise as well. So
Yeah.
you've set a good example.
We're about a month away from Springtown meeting opening,
Yeah.
so we'll see these new members in there. And I guess we're still waiting for looks like some of the results are starting
Ah,
to come in.
okay.
So why don't we take another quick break here, and we should have some figures by the time we come back in a few minutes.
Well, if folks can stay with us, the numbers are coming in. I think
Yeah.
there was some counting of the mail-in ballots and those kinds of things. I know they started to count the mail-ins this morning to get ahead of it, but I think we're just starting to get figures here, so it was a good chance just to run down some of the folks who were involved. It was a
Right.
very active campaign period, and
Exactly.
we wanted to give notice to those who spent so much time doing it. But we'll be able to report on the numbers pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, so let's take a short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes with
Great.
some numbers. wasn't allowed in. Oh, we're on? Yeah, okay, all right. We didn't get the high sign here, so we're back on, and I think that's what everybody's been waiting for.
Studying the
We've
numbers.
been taking a break here while the results have been tabulated and as they came in from town hall. So we can take a look at some of the results. Give them a moment here. We're just finishing up town meeting results. And we'll be ready to go in a moment. Okay. Precinct 6. Couple more precincts to go here, just seeing who was elected in town meeting and who wasn't, and then we'll head on to the townwide races. We appreciate your patience.
Yes, thank you for those who are hanging in there. We
Right.
did just get all of the votes at once. We've been able to post most of them, and they'll be on the screen very shortly.
On your screen.
We're into precinct 8 on putting up the screen for town meeting, so then we can just jump right back into the townwide vote
Right.
and go to town meeting after that.
All right. All right. So let's talk about select board. We're
There
going
we
to
go. There
we're
it
going to
is.
bring them up on the on our viewers' screen.
We can see what's interesting about this is that Bill McGonigal did pretty well across his home precinct for sure. He's in precinct 3, and Dorothy Simboli's in precinct 6. So you can see what happened here. Precinct 3, we can't add them up real quickly, but it was close to 900 votes. Precinct 6
Right.
has got, more in the 500
Say
plus
500s,
votes
yep.
situation. So there's a big difference there. Not that you're going to have all the votes go to one candidate for their home precinct, but it makes a difference when the turnout is there, because this is a pretty close election, frankly.
Well, it's also,
Well,
I think we're getting the cart before the horse. We
Oh.
have two elected officials here. Mike
Yeah.
Betancourt has run re-election, and Bill McGonigal has also won a seat on the board.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I thought we had.
We had
done
not
that at the
led.
start.
We had not led with the headline there.
Oh, I'm gonna leave with the headline is right. I'm just fascinated by the votes always, as you know.
Yep.
And here it's a close election, 1,400 to 1,277. It's 120 plus votes.
Mhm.
And when you take a look at, Dorothy Simboli is able to win in 5 and 6 and 7, but the margin there is overcome by Bill McGonigal in 1, 2, 3, and then even in 8, he did very well in 8 for that election. Mike Betancourt, of course, when I look at the numbers, won all 8 precincts. Did very well, very strong showing for Mike Betancourt, no question about it. And, strong showing for Bill McGonigal in
Right.
his first time out, and Dorothy.
And
as well.
Dorothy, yeah, she's
both did
very
very well.
respectable, right?
No question about it. So it was a very close election. I think if I'm,
And
You know,
Vince
looking at
Dixon,
it for
Vince
different
Dixon
candidates.
clearly has a following.
and Vince,
Yeah, sure.
this is his 3rd time out. He definitely, as you say, has a pretty consistent vote across the number for each precinct.
Mhm.
But obviously, without the following that the other 3 candidates had that
Right,
put together the campaign, that's the difference.
right,
Vince is still going to be active, and
sure.
those, the finance committee, subcommittee, and education type things. But in terms of being on the select board, Mike Betancourt and Bill McGonigal are going to do it. And Dorothy Simboli did a good job.
Yeah.
Did a good campaign, did well at the debates,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
it was a close election.
It was very close.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at the school committee and look at those results for.
Okay, you give us the lead on that one.
Okay, so Tom Hopcroft and Timothy Matthews are elected to the school committee. Tom Hopcroft re-elected as an incumbent, and Timothy Matthews coming on as a newcomer. And a very strong showing for a
Yeah.
newcomer.
And the lead there is that he did well in all precincts. So Tim Matthews, half a dozen years as a town resident, offered himself for school committee and definitely impressed people in the background of early childhood education, focused on literacy issues. His experience in dedicating his career to education and how young people learn impressed everyone. And he's going to come on with Tom Hopcroft doing his second term. And definitely here, both Meelan Trong and Carrie Sue Barney, both from Precinct 4. When you look at that, the surprise for me in a way is how well Tim Matthews did in Precinct 4, being from Precinct 1. Not that everything breaks down by what precinct do you come from, but
Right.
Tim Matthews is known in Precinct 1, becoming known across the town in a short period of time. And Meelan and Carrie Sue are well known in Precinct 4, that's for sure. And they both have a good following. So the surprise there is that they didn't do a little better in the home base. Perhaps they split the votes up, frankly,
Yeah.
in Precinct 4, which gave Tim Matthews a chance to come in and get the margin that was necessary. And actually, when I look at the numbers, it was a margin that was good enough that you had to worry whether Tom Hopcroft was going to have enough margin himself,
Right.
which he does. And they both did. Both Tom Hopcroft and Tim Matthews did very well, ran good campaigns. As I said earlier in the night, all four candidates are tremendously qualified, and no question about
Right.
it.
Right.
It's just a question of who's going to vote and who's going to
Yeah,
get
who's gonna-
their vote out. And Tim Matthews certainly did. Lots of
Definitely.
mailings.
Definitely. Again,
Lots of
very
mailings.
impressive showing for a newcomer first. I think he's held no other town office, right?
Oh no, he's just
Oh,
he's new to it. That's what he's
Yeah,
been.
yeah.
He's been a little bit active. And he's been in town meeting for town meeting 1.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
and his children are young enough that they're not really into the middle elementary school grades yet, so he hasn't been that visible as a parent volunteer. I think they're 3 and 7, if I'm not mistaken, his 2 children. But he's obviously very capable, and
Right.
it showed that in the campaign. So
And I would say a good personality. I saw both of them at the candidates breakfast.
Yeah.
They were both very
Oh.
collegial. I get the impression they'll work well together.
I thought all 4 candidates did very well in the debate.
They did.
They showed themselves to be very, very capable. The campaign that are being run are very sophisticated. The mailings now, the postcards that come to you, the signage. We're not doing top roof racks on the cars anymore. We're doing more.
We're doing lawn signs.
We're doing lawn
And
signs.
remember,
right.
many years, nobody did lawn signs in
Right.
Winchester.
No.
It was verboten.
It was, that's right. People thought there was a signed bylaw that said no lawn signs. That's what they do in those other communities. No, we now have
Yeah,
signs
not
on
in
the,
Winchester, but
on the lawns.
we've come around.
I'll tell you, if for Tom Hopcroft, if you went down Pond Street, I think there were probably 4 houses on Pond Street that didn't have a sign for Tom. I think they were in Florida for the winter.
And I'm surprised by one of my neighbors has a sign out for him, and they don't have any kids, and I didn't realize they were even involved in town politics. But
Well,
they
there you
were out.
go.
They were out for Tom. So good
Well,
for
there's
him.
the analysis. The headline there is Tim Matthews really impressed with his turnout and his vote.
Yeah.
And we see great need to keep Meelan and Carrie Sue involved. Frankly, they've been
Mm-hmm.
very, very active in the parents' activities here, and good reason to stay involved in school committee and other areas of the town as well. But thank you to Tom Hopcroft and Tim Matthews for coming forward on what they're going to be doing with the
Right.
school committee going forward.
So let's see, let's take a look at Housing Authority.
Well, this was interesting, as we talked about earlier. Tom Mourier is 1 year out of Winchester High School and really committed to see more transportation for seniors, more housing for seniors, and came forward to say that's what I wanted to help out with. But James Harris was very impressive, I felt, in his one opportunity with the League of Women Voters, but comes from a family that's been in Winchester for, as he says, 100 years, and I think he's known well enough. He's a young man, just 31 himself, and came on as an appointee last year to fill Steve Anderson's seat. Steve's last year in his second term as Housing Authority, 5-year term. And James Harris loved his first year, couldn't say enough about it, got very involved in the water pipe replacement project we have going at the Housing Authority, and roof replacement that's on the deck to be done. He was really into it, and I think that showed to the people who paid attention. And obviously, more than a 2-to-1 victory for him.
Right.
Yep.
Good for him. But, let's credit Thomas for, stepping forward, and I would doubt it's the last we've heard of him.
Oh, I think that's absolutely correct.
Right.
And he's over at Northeastern University in his first year, and active, as I said earlier, with the student group there for affordable housing construction in Boston. They have a program that the students are trying to help on through Northeastern, and he's into the middle of that. And I think we'll hear from him down the road.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Planning board, if we want to switch to that, I mean, actually, we should never read there, I don't think.
Yeah,
We got
they
two
both
positions,
are, they
3
both
years.
are elected.
They both are elected.
Andrew.
So,
Yeah,
want to take that off
2
there.
spots open, yeah.
There we go.
So there you go, right.
Hopefully he wasn't watching and panicked.
And what you'd expect, I mean, Brian is a veteran candidate, as you know,
Yeah.
topped the ticket for school committee when he
Yeah.
did that, and easily topped the ticket here as well. A good vote for John, too, because you didn't have to vote for 2, and sometimes people would just go in and just say,
Pick
well,
it.
I'm going to vote for my guy, but
Yeah.
he did very well. It's a
Yeah.
good showing. If I'm John Cortezis, I want to
Yeah.
say.
So again,
be
recapping,
encouraged.
both are elected,
Yep.
because there were two
Yep.
positions available.
Yeah, very good.
I don't know if we want to see any of the other ones. Board of Health, assessors, library trustees.
Board of Health,
all-
Dr. Shannon Vanalia is going to be elected. Paul Manganaro is going to be elected to the
Yeah.
Board of Assessors for the 4th term, and James Remis is going to be voted to the Library Board of Trustees for the 1st term.
Right.
And we know that's going on. And Heather Von Meering, I'm sure, was successful for the 4th term as town moderator. And we're grateful for the
So
service
let's
that she's
take a look
doing.
at our precincts.
Okay.
Precinct 1.
So precinct 1, and you see the red mark there is for the openings that didn't get filled. So Tony Frayne and Matthew Rotundi did not succeed here, but Seamus Brady, who's just coming off the school committee, got the top, and Bob Deering, our Citizen of the Year, got the 2nd, and Doug Marmon, former selectman, Chris Nixon, current chair of the school committee, and go right down the line, Morris Sullivan,
Yep.
Susan Vidicchio, of course, having
So again, we
served on
have,
the board of the select board herself, Kate Duncan, Mark
again,
Freblowitz.
recapping, we had 10
Yeah,
10 candidates for 8 seats, so
yeah,
2, as in other precincts, 2 did not make it, but
yeah, so this is good.
always credit for running.
Yeah,
Let's take a
so,
look at precinct
Mark
2.
Freblowitz passed school committee, all those good people, so
Yep.
anyway, so now we're into 2,
Precinct 2 was the same thing. It was
yeah,
10 candidates for 8 seats.
yeah, boy, oh, that's right, they're not listed there as number 1 because Laura Colella did get more than Sue Carney, so.
Right, they're
Yeah,
not,
so,
they're not in order, right.
So very good. And there's George Nowell Jr., so a very popular guy in the district for sure. And George, of course, just on the Board of Assessors now. And Dad didn't get as many votes as Junior, so sorry about that, Dad. If I were in precinct 2, I would have been voting for you. So,
That'll be some family discussion.
that's true too. But that's very, very good. Good good situation. Daniel Nakamoto, 2 terms on the Personnel Board, which is really a huge, wonderful service to the town to be on that board. And so
All right.
Deanna Loffer, Ryan Beck, they came on as, in the last year, I
Yep.
think, in the caucus, being elected by the caucus to step up, so good for them.
Good. All right. Precinct
Okay.
3. Let's take a look at 3.
Well, there you go for number 3, so
Same thing, 10 candidates for 8
358,
seats, so
people
2
wanted
didn't
to
make it, but boy, even the 2 that didn't make it are pretty respectable vote totals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And people wanted to support their state senator, that's for sure, and
Yeah.
so good for that situation. And see, Kara Connolly, I guess her support from the Winchester Foundation for Educational
yeah.
Excellence. I say Paul Harris Fellow, or award winner they call
Yeah.
it now, don't they? And it makes
Yeah.
sense. But right down the line, Kathy Bodie, as we know, phenomenal service, 5-time school committee, past president of ABC and all that. And there's Mr. Tom Harley, there he is, so good for him. So
Yeah.
many things that Tom has been doing, past planning board, 3-time select board and all that.
In our
all the
one-year
way through.
one-year
good.
term, we had 2 candidates for a one-year position.
Yeah, makes sense too that Sarah Girardi would be recognized, and Shannon Footer ran into, as they would say, times, ran into a buzzsaw if you'd say you're getting beaten up on the golf course. But Sarah, past school committee chair, past capital planning committee,
Yeah,
past co-chair, Lincoln and McCall parents, and
very strong
soccer
name,
support from
very
the soccer
strong name
board.
recognition
Very
here.
strong,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And Laura Herman, your video worked out. Look at that, 3 votes over Megan Elizabeth Sheehan. Votes count, and believe me, I think that video was worth 3 votes. It was very well done. If people saw it, they couldn't help vote for you, so that was a good one.
right.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to precinct 4.
Okay,
Same situation where we had
Same
10
situation.
candidates.
Yeah.
10 candidates for 8 positions.
we did, and so Sally Quinn looks like, that looks like the topper there, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken, Citizen of the Year,
Yes.
as we say, and Candace Van Aken, a fave for sure too,
Yeah,
and Steve Boxansky, who's had a lot of work with youth sports and obviously gained a good following by that. Mary Kay McIntyre, an ABC host family and part of the administration team on ABC.
Yep.
So, very a good job there for sure
exactly.
with those with
So
all
pretty-
those
Pretty
folks.
close totals there.
Yeah.
All right, and going on to precinct 5.
Okay.
Precinct 5
Oh,
was
pretty
our,
close, pretty bunched up.
oh yeah, interesting.
So,
So,
yeah, that, precinct 5 was the one where we had the 7 candidates for 8 spots. So
right,
everybody gets elected, and definitely bunched up. Wow, big time. So
so
not
I
much
guess the big question there,
separating out,
did
yeah.
anybody get enough write-ins?
well, Stephanie was running. She was. I didn't. Yeah, she was the one writing. She was a single candidate for the write-in. I mean, for the 1-year term. So that wasn't a write-in. That was.
No, I'm just looking at write-ins for the 3-year terms. She was just 63 of them.
Oh, see, yeah.
So we don't know if,
Yeah, we don't know who the write-in is. That was one.
if any, I guess if any candidate topped the number of write-ins, they would be in.
We'll see tomorrow, and
Yeah.
it's not on there, but Connor Graham
Oh,
was the one. Connor Graham, who moved into Winchester in 2023, but wrote a very convincing piece on the League of Women Voters website that he loved the town and hoped that he could win the write-in for the one seat that was definitely going to be open, knowing there were only 7 candidates for the 8 seats. So whether Connor Graham becomes a write-in, we'll find that out. But in the meantime, Stephanie put her name on as the only candidate for the 2-year term that was available.
right.
So we're all set there.
Well, that'll be, again, interesting. So you
So
get
everybody who
63
ran,
write-ins. That's a pretty
Oh, it's a lot of write-ins.
Yeah, that's a
ton
lot of
write-ins.
write-ins, and I know,
I guess Connor might have gone knocking on doors, who knows?
yeah,
Yep.
well, they may still be tabulating them over at Town Hall.
Well,
All right, Precinct 6.
okay, precinct 6, so.
Again, back to our 10 candidates for 8 slots.
Yeah, so, you've got,
Copying the ticket there. Looks like
is
Monica Ross and, well,
both,
the two Rosses,
both,
exactly the same.
so that makes, good for, that means no fighting at home on that one, so that's a good,
Right, right.
that's pretty good, frankly. And, good, congratulations to both of them. And Brenda did very nicely, as we know, the chairman of the parents group for 4 different schools over time, or 3 different schools, and then the coalition. So Andrew Clavette, who's been active in youth hockey, Steve Monell,
Yeah.
a long time himself,
Yep.
active. So that's a good run down there.
I find it very interesting that the Russes got exactly the same number of votes. So,
Yeah.
like, everybody who voted for one voted for the other.
What you can see by the caucus on that, for someone saying, why does it say caucus? What means, it said on the ballot, it didn't put candidate for reelection on the ballot. They happen to have been at town meeting, because when there's a vacancy in the precinct, at the start of town meeting, the precinct's caucus, those who are elected in the precinct caucus to fill the vacancies.
Right.
So Brenda, Jeffrey, and Derek were all people who filled a vacancy, but the vacancy only goes till the next town election.
Right.
So they have to show up for town election. So they're not technically re-elected by the town.
Right.
They're not by the precinct voters. They
Well,
were
it's
elected.
the first time they've actually been
That's
elected.
right, yeah. They
Right.
were elected by the council people for the,
Right.
for the town meeting membership, but now they're elected by the citizens of the precinct.
And
as
apparently
well.
liked the experience enough to run.
Right, so Jeffrey didn't come back in, but after being elected by the caucus, but he was in town meeting, and they'll have a chance to either go to the next caucus, which he might be successful at, and
Right.
if there's an opening,
Yep.
there might be.
All right.
So that's interesting. Precinct 6, okay.
7, Precinct 7
Okay, so
Yeah.
precinct 7
was.
had 8 candidates for 8 seats, so
slots.
everybody got
Everybody-
selected.
Yep,
And it said there were, not only 3, there were only 3 incumbents, but the truth is, as you see Isabella McGee and Joshua Burrs, they were actually in by the caucus, now they're in by the vote itself. So that's pretty good. And Victoria Hopcroft came in as a new candidate, did very nicely. You can see that. And who else was a new candidate there? I think Isabel McGee was a caucus, Joshua caucus. So they were actually already in. Margaret Browder was the new candidate. So both Victoria and Margaret were the new candidates there, and did fine,
all
and,
right,
very
so
good.
that was an easy one. Let's move on to our last precinct, Precinct 8.
Yeah. And that was 7
And,
candidates for 8 seats here too as well. And
So again,
Eric-
looking at, again,
Eric
looking at
Fogel
write-ins,
is-
we had
yeah.
72 write-ins, so there could be,
Yeah.
another candidate
Yeah.
that got,
Exactly right.
got
Yeah,
the top
exactly
number of
right.
write-ins.
So those are pretty close votes as well. I mean, they were all,
Yeah,
that's pretty close, frankly. And then
Yeah.
on the one below, that's a terrific close race, frankly. And I mentioned earlier, Christine Lowenstein's very active in the volunteer with school sports, especially with the Winchester High School football sports the last 4 years. With her son was doing fabulous work for a very nice football team that Winchester had the last few years, frankly. And so I think there were some fans of young Mr. Lowenstein who came forward as well.
Sure.
And she's earned her stripes with the volunteering. And Laura is also a volunteer with the Morocco Parents Association, co-op with the nursery school, so she's building a following too. But that was a nice, close race.
Yeah, it is a nice
obviously.
close race, sure.
So very good.
All right, we've covered all our precincts. Let's, before we wrap up our almost 2 hours here, let's go back to the select board race in case somebody is just tuning in, we have two elected. Michael Betancourt is back for another term on the select board, and newcomer Bill McGonigal, not newcomer to the town, but newcomer to the board, will be at their next meeting, which I haven't looked at the schedule, might be next Monday.
Might be. Not sure myself, but they're ready to go. They go
Right.
right on the board. Yeah, when town election comes, when you're going off the board, so Rich Mucci fulfilled his term up to
Yep.
this town election, so he doesn't go to the next election to next board meeting, I'm sorry, to
Yeah,
swear Bill McGonigal in.
No,
or
he
anything.
had his,
But as I said earlier, we know we're going to see Rich Bucci a lot of times in town activities. Is still very active with
Right.
the chamber
yep.
and prominently involved in a lot of things. So good for
But
him.
he might decide to focus on his career a little bit too.
Well,
So
it,
I'm sure
it, it does
I'm
get
sure
to
it's-
the point where you are, which the chair of the group, and you're doing 30 hours a week.
right.
And as I always used to say, it's you really top your up hours because you're really into what you're doing. That doesn't mean you won't be when you go to work, but that gets the second shift. And you can only do that for so much of your mid-career.
Right. Well, as you well know, having served on that board.
Oh, it's great fun.
Yep. Was it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. But,
And then our other contested race school committee. Take a quick look at that. Tom Hopcroft re-elected to the school committee, and Tim Matthews coming on with a very strong showing and
yeah.
joining the school committee.
Yeah, the story there is really Tim Matthews being strong right through every precinct, and particularly, as I say, doing well in precinct 3, which is, which he really did right across the board. He and I only say that because there's a big turnout in precinct 3. Why that's an important precinct is because the turnout is usually so strong in that precinct versus some of the other precincts. Something to be recognized as you're running for town office.
Well, it brings the question: is the higher population in
Well,
precinct 3?
it
just
basically
more
over the
active?
years, no, you can't. It's got to be the same population. That's why we redistrict every few years when
Yeah.
the people have moved around or there's big development in one precinct versus another. But the situation is, location-wise, I think this is my own, unofficial, that those people who are close to the center of the town and see the activity and get involved
Yeah.
are more politically active in a sense. And it doesn't mean the other precincts aren't, because they, over the years, have been swing votes in many elections. 5 and 6 definitely have been swing votes. And 1 and 2 have been swing votes, and 8. Depends on the election, but the turnout historically is higher for 3, 4, 7. They're more in the center.
Right.
And so doing well in those precincts helps you a lot if you're running if you're running statewide, if you're running townwide.
Townwide. Let's not. Sorry. The only other contested race was Housing Authority, and we'll just touch on that before we go.
Yeah.
There we are. And James Harris is elected to the Housing Authority.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good showing. He's very excited about being on the Housing Authority, and so I'm going to just guess that the Housing Authority staff is thrilled to see him come back, and he's really getting into it in his first year on the Housing Authority.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we are coming up on the 10 o'clock hour, and I think that's our wrap up. Once again,
Okay.
It's been a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm always amazed at the depth of research you do ahead of the game.
I appreciate the candidates running as they do and serving as they do, and it's fun to be involved with you to talk about it.
It
So
is
thank
fun.
you for having me here.
Always a pleasure, always a pleasure. And we don't want to leave without thanking our WinCam staff here tonight, staff and volunteer. for our capable graphics and running this whole production. We did not have any candidates come in just because we were not actually physically set up to entertain any of them tonight, but I'm sure they will be reaching out to their supporters, and we congratulate all the candidates for stepping forward, and also the candidates who have successfully won their seats. So
Yeah.
with that, we want to thank you for watching, wherever my camera is. I want to thank you for watching. I'm Alan Iden. This is Alan McDonald. And we'll probably be back here again next March.
Well,
We think. We'll see.
we'll see.
We'll see.
There might be-
Unless more capable people
There might
step
be
forward.
a youth movement, but we'll
There we
see.
go. All right. Thanks very much for watching, and thank you for all the people that stepped forward and got out to vote today. Have a good night.